Thank you for listening to the BjjBrick Podcast. We'll be bringing you Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and good times. We hope to flatten your Jiu-Jitsu learning curve, help you get the most out of your grappling ability, and meet your goals both on and off the mat.
Welcome back to the BjjBrick Podcast. This is episode 312. My name is Byron. I'm here with my good buddies, Joe and Gary. Gary sounds a little like Barry White. We'll get to that in a little bit. But this episode, we're talking about getting better while you roll. We want you guys learning while you're out there grappling and training. So I think that's a big topic, a big milestone, and a great way to get better at jiu-jitsu is to make sure while you're rolling is to be learning. I know we have both you guys on the line. Joe, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, Byron. How are you?
That was Joe doing an impression of Gary. Gary White, how you doing?
I am doing good, guys. I'm excited for today's episode, learning while you roll it. And sorry, my voice is a little off today. I think I'm sick. I think the government did something to me, maybe some chemtrails to make me like this. But I think it's because the government knows that I'm spearheading a group from Wichita to go to Area 51 to storm it on 9/20. And that's why I'm excited about this episode of, learning while you're rolling, because I have to get all those guys up to par, because we're not going to do it like everybody else. Our little group, all the other groups are going to be running in there, and they're going to get caught. They're going to get machine gunned. We're shrimping, buddies. And so we're going to shrimp. Yeah, we're going to shrimp into Area 51. And it'd be better if we're taking fire. And we're going to work leg locks. So if any of those, I don't think people have tried leg locks on the aliens, and we're going to be the first to do it. So I'm excited about this episode to get us going.
Ever since Gary got abducted and probed that one time, he's been trying to get back in there.
Yeah, I've definitely been wanting to get probed again.
But, wow, that's a long story short. Gary has a bit of a cold. It sounds different today. And he's going to get through it this episode with us, and we appreciate that, Gary.
Why, thank you.
It wasn't quite the same without you. Nobody made fun of me. I didn't. The show went rather quickly and efficiently. I forgot what else we talked about.
Nobody to sidetrack it like I always do.
We missed you, though, brother. We missed you.
Why, thank you.
Good to have you back.
Yeah, I really missed you too, Joe.
Hey, my friends, this is Byron jumping in from the audio editing room. I want to make a quick programming note before we get really started in this show today. First off, Gary's audio will cut out here in a little while. He has some problems with his computer. It doesn't charge while he's actually using it, so he lost power. So short stay by Gary, but glad to have him. And another thing, next week we're going to take the week off and come back the week after that. So we have an interview with Dave Brown scheduled for next week. It just happens to be that both Gary and Joe are unavailable to record anything next week. So we're just going to take off next week and get back to our normal thing after that. So even at the end of the episode, we talk about what happens next week. It's actually 2 weeks from now. So we'll be back at it. I want to give you a heads up. I didn't want you to worry about missing a week or anything like that, but that's what's going to happen. But enjoy this show.
Well, this brings us to our life lesson, guys. I think we've hassled Gary for being sick long enough. We'll get on with the show. Each week we bring you a life lesson. Generally, it's something that I hope helps people get better at jiu-jitsu. I don't know that this week's life lesson is aimed in that direction. I hope it will encourage everybody to live their best life. I've been fortunate enough to keep in touch with my first jiu-jitsu coach. And what I remember from training with him, one of the things I remember is he had dreams to travel the world and to use jiu-jitsu as a vehicle to see other places and enjoy that experience of traveling. And he was passionate about taking jiu-jitsu places where it wasn't already. That was kind of his deal. He didn't want to move to LA or Houston or something and get in the big competition, seeing that's some people's dream, but that wasn't his. And most recently, he's been living in Cyprus, in the Mediterranean, and I'm talking about my coach, Nick Unander. And last week, while he was in class. Well, he got done with class. He taught class. Then he was catching a little extra cardio work, and he collapsed on the gym floor and had to get taken to the hospital. It turns out he had a irregular heartbeat, and they got that straightened out, but they're not sure what caused it. So they've got him on restricted exercise now. He can only walk, and so he's at a point in his life where his jiu-jitsu training may never be the same again. I'm hoping it is. I'm hoping the doctors will have some good answers for him, and he'll be back on the mats in a week or two. But what I want you guys to think about is he had these dreams, and he lived them. And I think, it's like adding salt to the wound if you suffer an injury like that, or a life event where you can no longer train jiu-jitsu, or you can no longer pursue some other passion that you have. When that day comes, if you've got 5 things that were on the table, you kept saying, one day I'm going to do this, one day I'm going to do this, one day I'm going to do this, and you never do, man, you're going to regret that when those options are taken off the table. So a shout out to Nick. Nick, I hope you're feeling better. And to everybody out there that's got a dream on the table that you're going to do someday, don't wait till someday, man. Get out there and do it today.
Yeah, that's a good reminder, and we wish him the best with healing up in his recovery. And we all have that kind of that clock or expiration date somewhere on us that we don't know. And if you want to go do something, you could push it off a little while and maybe still do it, but eventually there's a date that you can't accomplish the goal that you had hoped. And so, and a lot of us, like for me, just that journey, I don't have like an end goal necessarily, but if there's ever a day I can't do jiu-jitsu for some medical reason like that, I will want to have felt like I did myself justice by the way I trained and the way I conducted myself on the mats.
Hey, Joe, I know he teaches in Cyprus now. Where did you train with him? Was he in the States before, or where did you I know you've been around a lot of different places, so where did you first start? Where did you first meet him?
On the Oregon coast. He had a small gym in Astoria, Oregon. So.
Okay, perfect. But once again, our thoughts and prayers are with Nick and his family, and he has been on the show, so check that one out. But we're wishing Nick a speedy recovery.
Yep, thanks for sharing the update there, Joe. And definitely, if you haven't heard the episode with Nick, go check it out. And he's definitely part of this community, and he definitely has that. We're grateful that he brought you, which you like kind of start with jiu-jitsu, Joe, and it was a good start. So that's cool.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, good luck, Nick.
Yep, he's got the bricklayers all behind him. We're all praying for him, and power in numbers. The bricklayers are helping him out.
Yep.
So kind of like how you could pair an episode topic to another topic. I mean that's a terrible example. You could pair like a meal with like a fine wine, right, Gary? And you could like they would help each other out. Don't know much about wine, but that in theory that's what happens.
Yes.
I think that the 6 BJJ trading games pairs well with this episode. This episode, we're going to talk about doing things while you're rolling to really enhance and accelerate your learning. And that's what the 6 BJJ training games, it's about that. It's about changing what you're doing while you're rolling and changing some of your objectives in order to get new experiences on the mat and possibly like find new avenues within your own game. So if you are looking for a little bit more information, kind of ideas about rolling and training differently, check out 6 BJJ Trading Games. It's a little over an hour long. It's an audiobook I made a while back. It's $5.99, and we've heard some great things about it. So this wraps up the 4th week in a row that we've had a quote from one of the artists that the Ninja Turtles were named after, which is, I think it's just odd. But we started with, I think it was Michelangelo.
Yeah, so give me some credit there.
Way to go. Gary he's always sending in quotes and finding stuff for us to talk about on the show.
I am.
Good job, Gary.
Has that ever happened?
I don't know. It probably has.
I'm that guy, like, if you worked with me the way we work here, you would hate me. You'd be like, this guy does absolutely nothing except show up. I clock in and I clock out. And
whether you're sick or not.
I'm like a union employee.
But I think that maybe Gary kicked off this idea. Go ahead, Joe. Sorry.
Gary's writing them good looks, man. It's his charm, personality, and good looks. That's what he brings to the table.
I don't think I have any of those, but thank you, Joe, for trying to enhance my self-esteem.
Yeah, Gary, you're just so fortunate you're able to write those that far, even into your ripe old age.
So you're making fun of Joe's age?
I was trying to make fun of your age.
Yeah, we're
basically
veterans
twins
of the same era.
Yeah. But so Donatello, I started on the other three Ninja Turtles, Michelangelo, Leonardo, and Raphael, I just type in their name and type in quote, and dozens of quotes pop up. And so we get to the last one here, Donatello. I type in his name, and I find articles about how there's very little documented about what he has said. I was like, oh man. But I did find a quote, and he was talking to another artist about carving a wooden crucifix, and he told the artist, take the wood and make it your own. Pretty simple. That's the quote we have to work with, gentlemen. But that's Donatello. He's not known for having a million quotes. But take the wood and make it your own. So if something is unique about your body or the way you're able to perform jiu-jitsu, make that your own. You know, I look at some athletes who are adaptive athletes, like Brian Freeman. Take the jiu-jitsu and make it your own. He lost the use of much of his legs, and he's doing jiu-jitsu with able-bodied competitors, but he's taking the jiu-jitsu and making his own. He's really forming it to fit him and getting the most out of it that he possibly can. Doing great on the mats as well. And I've rolled with the guy, and definitely got caught in a really technical and solid Kimura, and I learned some stuff about that from him on that day. But just take what you have, make it your own. Like there's no point in trying to just be upset about the cards you were dealt in life or whatever. Take it and play the game that you can. So if, when Donatello was helping another artist explain, maybe the guy didn't like what he was given to work with. Doesn't matter. Work with that and do your best. Gary was blessed with good looks. He's rode that for quite a while. I have not been, but I've taken what I've got. I tried to add a little bit of a lame sense of humor and these sort of things, and try to make it my own.
Byron, I like that. Not about the part about your lame jokes. The part about
your good looks?
Talking about. Well, that was good too. Yeah, but more about Brian Freeman and. I've always talked about jiu-jitsu as an art, and, we all have our own interpretation of art, and we make jiu-jitsu what we want it to be. We work on different stuff. There's guys who like the flying game, the fast game, the inverted game, guys who like other stuff. And, depending on, you could have a fused neck, fused vertebrae, and you can't invert, you're going to have to figure out a game. And then, my thoughts were just really rambling about, jiu-jitsu people just don't accept no. Take what you've got in life and make something of it. And I'm starting to think now, I've really been following Stephen Kesting's journey. He's doing like a 1,000-mile kayak trip up in the Pacific Northwest in Canada, and he's writing about it every night. It's a crazy trip. But if I remember right about Stephen, and you guys might need to correct me if I'm wrong, but he had some kind of health problem. I don't know if it was like an organ transplant or something. But
he's a recipient of an organ transplant.
Yeah, and I mean, here he is, and reading what he's doing and dealing with the headwinds, the tailwinds, the portaging, and this crazy trip he's going on. That guy, I don't care. You could get all the bricklayers here, and we could put him in a cage, made out of bricks with no air, no food, no water. He'd find a way out of it. He's going to figure out a way. And, but that's what I really, that's what I took from it is just, we can do something, whatever your hand is dealt, figure out a way to work that to your best of your ability.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'll take it a little lighter direction and just say that I really like that the arguments about gi or no gi or submission only versus timed point matches. A lot of that seems to have gone away, and I am very happy about that. That's how I look at this. As a grappler, if you want to work in the gi and you like stand up and judo throws, and you want to find some place that's what they do, that's awesome, man. If you like to roll no gi and you don't care about points or timers and you just want to roll and hunt for submissions, awesome. Whatever it is about grappling that speaks to you, go out there and do that. That's the way I see this, and I think it's pretty simple.
Yeah, so that with that quote wraps up our 4 Ninja Turtles. We'll see where we go from here, but it was kind of fun having that theme for a little while. Didn't realize how hard it would get when I ran into one that didn't really have much quotes out there, but that worked out good for us.
Yeah, maybe we could find some quotes from the Three Stooges.
Yeah, three very wise people we've never been compared to.
Yeah.
I hear Curly back there. But so just in case you're new to the show, we want to kind of bring you in here. Lots of we do an episode every week. Most of those shows are interviews with other grapplers, coaches, competitors, whoever we might find that we think is going to be a great person to bring to you. At the end of the month, we like to do a topic episode, where it's just us Three Stooges here, and we like to try to give you a little bit of stuff to grow on and get better. And this is something that I'm very passionate about, is learning while you do live training. If you are thinking that live training, you're rolling, is like you're just fighting, and the better person is going to win, and that's the way it is, I think you're really thinking of it in a way that's not beneficial for your best way to grow in jiu-jitsu. You need to think of your training, your live training, as a way to get better at jiu-jitsu, and a way to change what you're doing a little bit, get some feedback, and continue to get better. So there's a lot of ways we learn jiu-jitsu. You could watch YouTube video. You could, your coach could demonstrate techniques. You could practice those techniques. You could listen to a podcast to get some good tips. You could, watch a YouTube video. You could spar. You could do some positional sparring. All these things are great. But if you're rolling and it's just a fight, I think you're doing a disservice, a big disservice to yourself as far as your own personal growth with jiu-jitsu.
I agree. I'm looking at the notes that you sent us, and I have a question about the first topic. It says, why it is important to be learning while you're rolling. I want to break that down a little simpler, Byron, and ask you, like, as a 6-month in white belt, what am I supposed to be learning? Am I supposed to be, learning new techniques? Should I be watch a YouTube video before class and then come try and learn that while I'm rolling? What is it exactly that at 6 months in I should be getting out of a roll?
That's a great question, Joe. and I do appreciate your reading it the way that I meant to type it, not the way I actually typed that question with the typo in there. It's important to be learning while you're doing it. And if you're at the 6-month mark or less, you should have a couple of things that you're working on from each position. It's great to have the idea that, I'm going to work armbar from guard. I've got my 3 months on. I think I understand the idea of controlling the arm, controlling the posture. I understand the hip movement and getting into that armbar position and even finishing it successfully. That's what I wanted to do. But you know what happens? You start the roll. Hey, you pull guard. That's fantastic. And somebody within 8 seconds has passed your guard. Well, then you're potentially in a non-learning environment. You're in largely a suffering environment where you're getting smashed, you're confused, you don't know what to do. They may go to mount, they may choke you, armbar you, whatever is on the table or on the mat for you coming up next. But if that's the only thing you're working on, you've taken yourself out of that learning environment. So if you're able to keep that guard and work on that armbar, you're learning, you're trying to figure things out, you're trying to make things better. But I really am a big advocate of having 1 or 2 things from each position that you're actually working on. As far as, if I ask you, what would you do if somebody had mount on you? You have 2 answers for that. I try to roll them, or I'm going to try to shrimp and recover my guard. That's great. What would you do if somebody has side control on you? Well, I'm going to try to recover my guard by shrimping, building a frame, or maybe I'm underhook and try to get back up. Something like that. I think you need 2 things, because it's really easy for someone to just stop one of those things. But if you have two things you're working at from each position, it really makes it much more difficult for them to be able to just say, nope, can't do that. And that way, if you want to work on the armbar from guard and your guard gets passed immediately, you're still going to grow during the rolling process. Does that make sense, Joe? I think you put that one on the tee for me. I think
Yep.
Softball or T-ball, I guess is what it's called.
T-ball, yeah. My 3-year-old's getting pretty good at that. No, but that's good. So you would advise somebody at 6 months in not to be trying to learn 300 different techniques, or not to be necessarily doing something different every night, but to have an organized approach. These are the 6, 8, 10, however you want to break down the guards. These are the common positions you find yourself in, and these are your 2 answers for each one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good.
That's a good way to sum that up, Joe. I think a big part of this is changing the idea, because I don't know when the idea changed for me. I know with Gary, we're white belts, we're blue belts, we're rolling, it's fighting time. Like, yeah, we weren't punching and that sort of thing, but it was very competitive. We were rolling hard. I'm trying to submit the guy. I don't care if it, I started off the technique right and I finish it with a bunch of muscle and get him the tap. I got him the tap. That's cool. I really didn't care about cleaning up my jiu-jitsu. Would you agree, Gary? Like at the beginning, it was a fight. This our attitude towards training.
Yeah. Yep, it was a brawl. Just trying to get a tap. I don't care if it was a can opener or a head scissors, whatever worked.
And I think it's a better strategy for learning and just for long-term being on the mat is to change that fight, that you're rolling is not fighting.
Yeah, just by slowing it down and working on stuff, your game gets that much better. You may be a guy who's on the smaller side and is always pulling guard, and I can say that was you, Byron. You always pulled guard when we first started training. You had a very good arm bar from the guard. You worked triangles. You worked your favorite move, the Jabara money shot, but we'll leave that. We won't even talk about that. But
yeah,
you had
Gary.
those. You had like that trifecta of moves from one position, and your top game today is by far your best position. You put a lot of pressure on. You pass. You use a leg drag. You pass. You put pressure on. You make the guy just want to quit. And I remember I used to just be afraid to be in your guard. Now I'm to the point it's like, man, I don't want that guy to pass because he's going to punish me. And you would have never got to that part if you just cared about winning, because you were very good on the bottom. I mean, you were very good. You had some great submissions. You were very offensive. And if you didn't take the time to really work your game, well, first of all, you want to be a black belt. But second of all, your game wouldn't be where it is today. And I mean, I can say that for myself, and I know Joe can say it for himself. But you have to get out of that winning mindset in training. You have to, come prepared with a lesson plan of what you're trying to work on, and get better that way instead of just, if I'm always trying to win, I'm always going to my so-called brick, and which is good. Let's make my brick even better, but I'm neglecting other parts of my game.
Yeah, Gary, I really like how you use the term winning there, because I think that's the key. It's good to have competitive roles that are at a high intensity level where anybody else looking would think they're fighting. But the difference is you've taken winning and losing out of the equation. And I think that's really the key.
Yeah, this is happening when I roll with Gary, and occasionally he just gives me side control. Like, let's work from here a little bit. Like, okay, he knows this is one of my better positions, and he's just willing to say, let's do this a little bit. And we're not fighting, although if you were just to watch a minute of us during this roll, it would look like I'm trying my best to choke Gary. But in reality, he's trying to learn here. He's trying to sharpen his escapes and also trying to help me work on my attacks as well.
I had a roll the other day, and I know you guys know my shoulder's been bothering me, and I can't really use it too very. My right shoulder, I can't really use it, so I'm grappling almost one arm. But I was going against a younger individual still in high school who's been doing it like a year and a half. Pretty talented young fellow. I could just blitz this guy. I mean, just with the old man strength. I'm heavier than him. I'm stronger than him. But boy, I told myself I was just going to flow and put myself in some bad positions, and we rolled for probably an hour, and I put myself in some bad positions, and I'm not afraid to say it, the guy caught me with a choke. He had a very good back control. I kept putting myself in back control, and he took advantage of me, or took advantage of it, not of me. Yeah, and I didn't address the situation quick enough, and he almost put me to sleep, and but I learned a ton out of that role. I could have came in and just, brutalized the young man, and I wouldn't have got anything out of it, and he probably wouldn't have got anything out of it. But I got a ton out of it, and I don't really roll with this guy very often, but I'm going to start. I had a real fun time rolling with this guy, and he really helped my game get better.
Well, I've said it a couple times, and Gary just kind of really illustrated it. If you're not getting caught occasionally when you're rolling with people who shouldn't catch you, I don't think you're training right. I think that's kind of a good indication of whether or not you're approaching it correctly.
Yeah, yep, that's kind of where I was going with that, Joe. And, I was reading yesterday a post from one of our previous guests we've had on a couple times. We've also had him seminars with him, Rolly Delgado out of Little Rock, Arkansas, Westside MMA. And he was talking about, there was an article that was posted about if you're not putting yourselves in bad positions, you're doing yourself a disservice. And, I thought it was a cool article, but I liked what Rolly said. He's built his gym up, from a small gym to, I think every time I read one of his posts, he's got, 44 people on the mats every night. And he was talking about that there's no need at his gym to put yourself in difficult positions because there's enough guys to do it. But, even the top guys will say, you need to be in some difficult positions. You need to put yourself there, or you need to train with guys like Joe's talking about that can put you there if you want to get the most out of your jiu-jitsu and get better.
Yeah, and this is a great way to think about rolling with somebody who's less skilled than you, and to where you both can learn. I like to sometimes put myself in a spot where, let's just say we have a person who's very new, and they have my back, hooks, and they have my neck, rear naked choke set up, and they squeeze. You know what? I'm going to tap. Okay, so that's too far. So if I could take myself one step further, maybe they only have one arm underneath my neck. Can I get out of this spot? Maybe, maybe not. And one step further, so they don't have the arm on the neck. I'm going to get out of that. Okay, so somewhere between the range where a lot of times I still get out, and a lot of times it's just too far. Like if you could let it go to that range to where even somebody who's fairly new has everything they need, the choke works. If they have your neck, it doesn't matter how new they are. The choke is going to work great. So I like to kind of walk that line and try to discover where it is for me on certain chokes. And a lot of it is technical. I know if they have these 5 elements of this choke, there's nothing I could do about it. So maybe just let them have the 4 elements, and I could defend that 5th one. They still get choked. Sometimes I escape. Yeah. That sort of a thing. Play with that boundary.
I really like that boundary. You are more skilled than the other person, but you are putting yourself all the way because you're not going to escape. You're putting yourself, one little iota away from being at that point. It's kind of like the movie Flatliners. You go into that boundary. I like the way you explained that, and I think that's great. It's a great way for you to learn, but it's also a great way for the less skilled person to learn. Let's go back to my example. If I just brutalized my training partner, he wouldn't have got anything out of it. I wouldn't have got anything out of it. And I can tell you, I know I got a ton out of it, and he could have been lying to me, but I think he got a ton out of it too. So no matter what, we both got better. We got up off the mat, slapped high fives. I congratulate him for choking me. He got me in a triangle. He got me in a rear naked choke. He caught me in a couple other things, but it was great. It was a fun time.
And I don't understand the movie Flatliners reference, but
Flatliners,
I missed a good one.
You didn't see that, Byron?
Yeah. Byron, have you ever seen an Andy movie?
I saw the Big Lebowski. Does that count?
Didn't you not see Bloodsport?
I've seen Bloodsport.
Didn't we talk about this? Oh.
I might have had to catch up.
Yeah. Okay, so, Joe, we're going to be Byron's teachers today and give him some homework. Byron, you are going to watch Flatliners and then give us a synopsis. And I don't want you to get the clip notes. I want you to really watch it and watch the original one with Julia Roberts.
I think it's been remade, so don't watch that one. The original one's from 1990.
Yeah.
Watch the original.
So, and you'll understand what we're talking about.
All right.
So nice. Byron's got some homework, and we're going to take a little break because it's lunchtime. And then we're going to go to recess, and we'll come right back.
Oh, that was some good lunch.
We are back.
I don't get that, Gary.
We had the cardboard squared pizza and tater tots. So great lunch. And then we played dodgeball.
Okay, yeah. I like introducing the lunch break. Very nice, Gary. See, that's what Gary brings to the show is the unexpected elements.
Byron, right now, Joe, why did we let this dude on? He's ruining our show again.
Well, I didn't do anything to the audio on this one, guys. I let it roll. We paused about 2 seconds, and Gary came back. Like, not enough time to have lunch, Gary. But in the pretend world of podcasting, we could have been gone for a whole day. But I guess I ruined that. I'm sorry, Gary.
Who knows? Yeah. Yeah, we didn't even stop, to be honest with you.
So
Byron won't let us take lunch.
Yeah. I'm over here pretty hard on these guys. I've doubled their pay multiple times.
Yeah, Joe and I.
One of these days, we're going to get the 15 an hour, man.
Yeah, Joe and I talk about this all the time. I mean, the one nice thing is, we get paid weekly, very weekly.
That's true. Thank you. He'll be repeating that joke every 4 months.
Yeah.
Oh, Gary.
Well, that joke didn't go over too well, so I don't think we will be repeating it.
Oh, well, you brought it on for the first time this episode, and
but
good
guys, remember, 2 drink minimum. 2 drink minimum. Next show is 8.
Okay. Now to continue on with the current show. Now we're back from lunch. Really, I think it's easier if you're the more skilled person to make it a learning role. But if you're the less skilled person, if you're that blue belt rolling with a black belt, it's a little bit harder to make that, to change the tone of the role. Because I think it's usually the upper belt's choice of the type of role it's going to be. And you may get more of that fighting style of, you know what, I'm going to pass your guard 5 times in 5 minutes and tap you out each time I do it. Like, that's a pretty tough learning environment. You can learn in that spot, but I think it's just easier from the other perspective if you're the more skilled opponent and you kind of give and get a little bit and you billow back and forth, put yourself in some bad spots. It's really hard to control that when you're significantly outmatched. Would you guys agree, or how would you guys deal with that environment?
Yeah, it's not just more difficult to control the environment, but I don't know if this is typical or if it's just me. It's so much easier for me to be on the end of the equation where I'm allowing somebody else to work. And then when the coin is flipped, honestly, sometimes I get a feeling that passes through like, man, I don't need you to patronize me. I don't need your sympathy, and so it's important to not fall into that trap.
But I'll take it.
Well, but sometimes I don't. I know some people are like, man, if they see their coach's arm, they're going to grab that thing and they're going to get that tap eventually. And I just don't approach it that way. But it is important if you're rolling with somebody who can smash you and they're not. It's important to take advantage of that role. You might not get one from that guy every time. And when they let up and they let you work, it's important to take it. And it's important to realize that it ain't sympathy. In fact, it might be selfish. They're helping you get better so that in turn you can help them get better. So they're not being sympathetic or patronizing you. They're just letting you work. So it's important to take advantage of it.
Yeah. Joe, you hit the nail right on the head. You talked about selfish, and I don't really consider that selfish, but you're letting that person work. That person is going to get better faster. As that person gets better faster, everybody in your room, on your team, gets better faster. So it's just smart training. You're only as good as the weakest person in your room. As you take your team and you build everybody up, let's go back to the quote the post I was reading about Rolly Delgado. I mean, you're always going to get put in bad positions at Westside MMA. He's worked with all those guys. That room is so talented. They've brought everybody up, and it's just going to help the new people. And you're just bringing people along. Remember, you were at that point one time too, and you needed somebody to bring you along. And it's just the payback. It's making your gym, your team, your room that much better.
So. I'll ask you first, Joe. if you're rolling with somebody and it's literally they take you down, they pass your guard, and they submit you, you stand back up again, they take you down, they get on your back, they submit you. Like, these are a full minute passes by and this happens. Like, how do you make that a spot where you're learning a lot from?
Well, first, I recognize the value in it, even if I can't tangibly say afterwards, I learned this or I learned that. It's good to be under that kind of pressure sometimes. It's necessary. So I recognize the value in it. And then I might try and look for some commonalities, and if I'm getting swept, am I always getting swept in the same direction? Is it a similar sweep every time? Is it, am I posting on my hand when I shouldn't be, and they're just deleting that post and sweeping me over the shoulder? So that's one thing you can do, is look for common elements in your defeats.
Byron, I kind of just had this happen to me not too long ago. I was rolling with a black belt who really tooled me, and controlled side position and back position. And I've got a loose game. I was foot hunting and ended up getting passed, and spent the whole time being passed or back controlled, and had some major issues getting out of it. I was excited. I was like, man, this is nice to get beat up like that. And what I did is then I started working my back escapes, but I took it a step farther. It was kind of cool because then you taught your back control seminar, and I can tell you, because of that time of just getting murdered, so to say, by not being able to get out of somebody's back control. And I was kind of watching a UFC fight yesterday, and somebody had somebody's back for like the whole round. And but instead of getting mad that this guy just tooled me, let's go back to the drawing board. What do I need to do to get out of this? Let's drill it. Let's find the best guy with back control, put me in it, and I'm going to start drilling, getting out of it. And then point 2 is I'm going to get my back control better. You showed me a couple little things like that bottom foot, and then the top foot on the hip, controlling that, controlling the top hip. And those two things really help my top control or my back control offensively. So I look at it that, I spent a day getting murdered, but I'm now going to spend a lifetime getting better, because instead of crying because I got destroyed, I went back to the drawing board and tried to get better against a high level person from that position.
Gary, I don't think you know what the word "instead of" means. I think what you mean is in addition to crying because I got
Okay, you caught me. But sometimes it's nice to be on that end, and he could have took it easy with me and had a flow roll, and I still would have got a lot out of it. But I'm kind of glad he brought his A game, and maybe I made him bring his A game by right off the bat going leg hunting. And,
or Gary, maybe that was his B game.
Yeah, but hey, I have no problem if that was his B game, because I got whooped, and getting whooped is a great learning opportunity.
I agree, and it's also a good. Do you know the guy personally, Gary, or it was just a one-off training session?
It was a one-off training session.
Okay. I know with some of my training partners that are considerably better than me, we'll go long periods of time without them giving me their A game, and I've asked them before sometimes, just give me your competition game without injuring me, of course, because it's a good yardstick. And like you say, it's good sometimes just to be pressured and go through the grind.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times I relax too much. I just, as I know you guys have heard me numerous times, I do jiu-jitsu for fun. But sometimes it's nice to, like you said, have that guy bring that competition game. I have just come in and, beat me. And it shows me what I need to work on, what I am where my game is lacking. Yeah,
it's good. It's some big things here is not to get upset about it, not to get frustrated. Jiu-jitsu goes very deep. And we're all going to experience times where it feels like, man, I don't really know jiu-jitsu anymore. I walked in feeling pretty good about jiu-jitsu, and now I feel like I don't know anything because this person is just that much better.
Yeah.
And appreciate that. Don't get mad about that.
Appreciate it. That's the key word, because there are times that can make people quit. And, our goal is to grow jiu-jitsu. And just think, everybody has been in that position before. Everybody has been brutalized. Byron, remember when we first started and we'd roll with either Chris Easter or Jason Bircher? And those guys were nice enough. They didn't just brutalize us, but we saw how good they were. And it could have either – I remember Chris Easter getting me in the same choke over and over again. I mean, he was working on part of his game, but he did it nicely. But we could have just folded up and said, hey, this guy's too good, and I couldn't do anything and quit. But we learned from that. Those people taught us stuff. They showed us how to be tough, how to keep doing it, how to learn. And because otherwise you wouldn't be listening to this podcast right now unless Joe had his own podcast. Byron and I would probably be doing a Cooking with Byron podcast or something of that sort.
Yeah, and you can't even taste the food. I guess you can't even feel the choke, in the Jiu-Jitsu podcast either. Yeah, good stuff, guys. That's just part of jiu-jitsu. Sometimes somebody's more skilled than you. Sometimes that they bring it, and your response is largely to just absorb that. And Joe has good things like maybe it shows some holes in his game. It motivated Gary to learn better back stuff. Maybe it shows. Joe was talking about like, hey, he's doing this to me quite a bit. Maybe there's an area in my game where I need to look at this and like just thank you for shining the light on this part. It needs a little bit of work. And so maybe those roles. Sometimes I feel like someone's so much better, they could do whatever they want. Like they could do these moves that aren't really technically great moves, but they have so much. Their control is so good, or everything else is so good. They could do something kind of silly or wonky, and it still works. I don't need to spend a lot of time getting excited about that technique or trying to figure out how to defend that, because it's not something that somebody who is a similar skill level could pull off. And that's a little bit frustrating to me sometimes if I see somebody who's like a brown belt do a kind of a not great technique to a white belt, like just because they can, just because the position is strong and the white belt has no idea how to get out of it. Like I think a move that doesn't work very well is, I'm sure somebody out there's got it pretty good, is the arm triangle from bottom guard. I don't think that's a great technique.
It's funny you say that, because I'm the same way. I've got a training partner that does that, and I'm always like, I'm not a fan of that move.
You don't have the same control as you do from top, and you don't have the movement from one side control to the other side control. But it's like I say this, knowing full well I'll go work out tomorrow, and I could get caught in this by somebody who's significantly a better grappler than me. Yeah. But I won't get caught in it by somebody who's not as good of a grappler as me. Like, this is not going to happen. That's not a quality technique.
Well, it's like that UFC guy who finished a whole bunch of guys with that no-gi Ezekiel choke from the bottom. And everybody and their brother was doing it. And, I'm like, we're not working on this move. But I guarantee I roll with that guy or some guy who's got that move, he could finish it on me. Yeah. But I just don't like I'm going back to, like you said, I don't like the control. I don't like, the position-wise. I'd rather have back control and really have their hips locked down, have their upper body locked down, tie a couple arms up and, work to get my forearm under the neck.
The time investment it took him, and I'm just guessing because I don't know him, to make that choke good and effective from there, for most people, it probably would have been better spent learning how to quickly escape mount and work from a better position. And that's kind of the thing as far as like what's better for people. Learning how to do some little silly choke from bottom mount or, learn how to get out and then fight from a dominant position. And I think that position is very important.
Hey, guys, my freaking computer's about to die on me.
You signing off or you got to plug it in?
Well, the problem is my computer's getting so old that it won't allow me to charge while it's plugged in. And the bad thing is I slept all morning and I didn't get 100% charged, so I turned all the lights off on this sucker, but I might only have a couple more minutes left.
Okay. Well, do you want to keep rolling, or do you want to say bye and we'll wrap this up?
I'll just say bye. We'll do that.
Okay. Well,
or what do you want to do?
It's up to you, man. Whatever you can get.
I'm very low right now. I'm going to be.
I think we lost.
It was good to have you on the show, Gary.
I think we did lose him.
I think we did.
Okay. Well, we'll keep steamrolling. That's funny. I'll send him a text message. Give me a second, Joe.
So for the listeners out there, you guys don't know this, but we don't podcast in the same place. I'm in my house, Gary's at his, and Byron's at his wherever he's at. And we have a group text going on, and Byron's just been ragging Gary and his jiu-jitsu for the last 15 minutes while we're talking. I felt bad for Gary. Apparently he had enough and he's left. Byron, you got to be nice, man.
Yeah. I got to change up what's happening here. But let's just keep rolling with the rolling episode here. Something that I try to do, and I think it's hard to do like perfectly. I try to do it with some tact, is to offer advice while you're actually rolling. And this is typically done, as if you're more skilled than a person. So a blue belt offering advice to the white belt would be an example of that. But to be able to offer that advice while you're rolling, and I have found a couple of tricks that really help. Because you don't want to be the guy who ends up in a triangle, and it's pretty tight, but it could be a little better if they got a better angle. So you know what? I'm going to offer this advice. Hey, get a better angle. Grab my leg or grab my arm and really put yourself over here. Like, that's not... I don't like that advice. I don't like... it feels like I'm like copping out of the submission. Like I'm helping you finish something that you probably could not have finished, although good chance you could have. I don't like that. But I offer more defense advice. Like, Joe, if we're rolling and I sweep you with let's just say, I don't know, I just sweep you with a sweep. And then, you get back on top again, and then I hit you with the same sweep again, I'm going to probably say something about that. Either, and it might be my sweep, I'm good at that, or maybe you're doing something wrong, and it's not really a sweep that I've really worked a lot at, but I'm just catching you off balance. And so I'll say, hey, Joe, right there, the second time I've had this sweep offered to me, as you get up, you're leaving your leg in this weird position, or you're off balance. Try to stand up this way instead, or something like that. So I like to actually have the move happen twice and do that same thing twice to somebody. And the second time, stop the match. Say, hey, man, be careful when you stand up this way. Let's do it again. Rewind a little bit. I like to use those pause, rewind. I use those words a lot. Hey, pause right here a second. Look at this. Let's rewind a little bit and do it again. And so, Joe, if I'm going to sweep you for the second time, or if I did sweep you the second time, we'll probably pause, we'll rewind it back to where you were, and have you do something to where I can't sweep you the way I just did twice, because clearly there's something going on here. I don't want to offer advice where it seems rude, or it seems like I'm trying to get out of something by helping you in a spot where I'm actually in trouble. I usually just fight hard.
No, I agree 100%. You don't want to offer advice at a time where it looks like you're trying to get out of a submission. I think you don't want to really break the rhythm of the roll too much either. I like the idea of giving feedback after the roll, but as you kind of alluded to, sometimes right at the moment is a perfect time to point it out. I remember when I was training in Brazil, I rolled with a guy. He was a black belt. I was a white belt. He didn't speak very much English, and I didn't speak any Portuguese. So we're rolling, and he sweeps me with, I was a white belt. He sweeps me with a pretty basic, like, pendulum sweep. And immediately we get back into the guard, and he sweeps me again. And immediately we get back in the guard, he sweeps me again. But this time he paused right before he executed the sweep. He did the setup, he switched his hips, and then he kind of paused, and it's like, shit, I'm supposed to do something right here. So I post a leg out. Well, that's the wrong thing. He hooks the leg and sweeps me the other direction. And he must have swept me with the same sweep 7 or 8 times, but after the second or third time, he would pause at different places. He just kind of slow down a little bit. It's like, okay, I'm supposed to do something here. So there's more than one way to offer feedback while you're rolling. As I said, I'm not a fan of breaking the rhythm of the roll and having a conversation in the middle, but, you can sort of sweep a guy or start to sweep a guy when he posts his hand. Just say, hey, that's where you put your hand last time, and this is what happened. And then you delete the hand and you sweep him. And that's probably the best way to go about that, I think.
Yeah, that's and that's cool the way he was doing that language barrier there, and he was still able to get that across. Like, okay, I've hit you with this twice. I'm here again. Which one do differently? It's kind of the attitude it sounded like he had. That's pretty nice of him. Clearly, he's trying to help you, or trying to let you discover something about what's happening, versus just hammer you with that sweep.
Yep.
So be that type of person as you train. So just not everybody's up for hearing advice sometimes. It's just like in regular life. Somebody is complaining about something, or somebody is having a problem with something. They may not actually want advice, and that's something I routinely run into is offering advice when it's not ready to be received or not needed. But like if you think that they would like to hear this or like to know what just happened to them, that's a good thing. Help out the person. The other end of the question from other end of the spectrum from offering advice would be asking questions. So there you're asking for something to help yourself out. And we lost Gary's connection here, but I had something from here on Gary. He gets me in a leg entanglement, and I'm doing great if I could escape the entanglement. Typically, I could go from leg entanglement like this to a different leg entanglement or something like that, but he'll end up getting me in a footlock. I have a very tough time getting free. His leg entanglement game is pretty well ahead of mine by a fair margin. So I start, he gets me in there, and he catch me, he not catch me. Like, I'll ask a question. And so if Gary's getting close to ankle locking me and ask a question, I've basically conceded the leg lock. Like
that's as good as a tap.
Yeah, exactly. It is a tap, basically. Like if I'm armbarring Joe and he goes, which way's the better way to get out? Joe's basically tapped.
Yeah,
because he's like, what I'm doing now isn't going to work. So Gary's not competitive. He's not trying to kill me or get 8 taps on me in a certain week or whatever. But if I'm asking a question, it's like if it was competitive, I'm basically asking for help at this point. So when he's been doing it as well. Like started, he'd take on my legs, he could tap me, and I'll say, "Hey, stop right there, keep this. What should I have been doing? Because what I did didn't work." And it's like, open up, push on this leg here, and disengage where my foot is, or fight my grip, or something. He'll give different advice based on the situation. And now it's like he'll entangle my legs, and he'll either tell me, "Perfect, you're doing the right thing," or "No, not don't push here, or do this instead." And so he gets the position, and he's ready to coach because he knows I have some questions. So it's a relationship we built up as far as with this position. We could roll for 5 minutes, not do a lot of talking other than just chatting or making fun of or teasing each other, whatever. But once we get to the leg lock position, it becomes like he'll help me try to do better. And that's because I've started asking questions from this. I can get heel hooked and be upset about it over and over again. I can get heel hooked and say, what should I have done? Where did I go wrong? What would have been my escape? And that's what he's been real helpful for me. And another example of this with my own personal game is I was rolling with one of our, at the time, brown belt knights of black belt, Dane, and I have a certain guard pass. I have a few guard passes, but a certain one that I'm pretty confident in. And it's like a few steps, to check off the list. And once I get to that third step or so, the next two are pretty much automatic. They're going to happen. I got to that third step on Dane, and he swept me. I was like, I've been doing this pass for quite a while, and nobody sweeps me from step 3. Step 4 and step 5 are basically are going to happen every time. And then we scramble and we work, whatever. And I get the same spot again, step 3 on this guard pass, and he sweeps me again. I said, okay, Dane, how are you sweeping me from here? And he taught me. And this was great because anytime that you have a good part of your game that you're super comfortable with, that you're confident in, and somebody just dismantles it, you owe it to yourself to ask them, like, what happened? Like, that was a great thing that happened when Dane swept me twice on that, because I knew it wasn't something, because I like that pass. I knew it wasn't something I did wrong with my attempt of the past, and all the times I did it before, I did it the same way. It's doing great. But he had an answer for me that I hadn't seen. And if I just would have just ignored that and not asked him at all, I would have been doing myself a big disservice. And now that sweep that he did on me is one of my favorite sweeps as well. Because I understand the top position of it so well, it was easy for me to pick up that bottom position and learn that sweep. So anytime you're deep in your game, like if you're... Like if the opposite of this would be like if Gary's leg locking me and I catch him and I catch him in a straight ankle lock or whatever, it doesn't really happen. But let's just say that happened. And I do it again. 2 times in one roll. He should stop me and say, okay, what are you doing differently? Because Gary should be in his element there, and he's not anymore. Like, you need to learn from that experience. Joe, can you think of any times where you felt like super comfortable in your game and somebody just took you out of that? Like, man, okay, I got to learn from this experience.
Well, let me back up first before I get to that. And I want to say for the listeners that, Byron, when you're talking about getting swept in the middle of your favorite pass, or was it vice versa, you're not talking with like a frustration or anything in your voice. There's enthusiasm, and that's the level you want to get at. Like, you're good at something, and then you see an opportunity to get better at it. It's not like, damn it, this sweep isn't any good anymore. It's like, yeah, here's an opportunity to get better at it. So that's kind of the goal, guys, is to adopt that attitude, to be excited when you have a chance to learn. Man, I can't think, Byron, of an individual necessarily that takes me completely out of my game, but I can tell you that for a while I was in a circle where half guard wasn't a big deal, and this was 8 or 9 years ago, and I got halfway decent at some sweeps and a few submissions, and then like the jiu-jitsu community around me just caught up, and all of a sudden it was just not there anymore, and it's been a process to get through it. But Gary talks all the time about the me today could beat me last year and the year before. And I don't necessarily, I'm not sure I can say that, but what I can say is my half guard game today is not as successful against my peers, but my half guard game today would have destroyed my peers 5 years ago. So, you are getting better, and that happens. You get good at things, and then your teammates or an individual will catch up, and they'll have the kryptonite that just shuts everything down, and that gives you a chance to reevaluate and revamp things and come out better on the other side.
Yeah, that's great. Thinking about the attitude that you have about these, that's almost more important than just the lesson I learned from Gary about fighting legs, or Dane about my own guard pass and how he was able to take advantage of that and turn it on me. Like, those are great, but really, the big thing is to meet those opportunities with a positive attitude of learning from them versus, man, I hate that guard pass isn't working on Dane. I gotta find something different, No, this guy had that's why you do the guard pass on everybody you roll with, because 1 out of 50 has an answer that you haven't seen, and it's a great answer. And that's why I continue to do that guard pass on people who I don't know, because maybe I'll see something new. And think of that as an opportunity, not a source of frustration. I like that, Joe.
Yep. So real quick, let's get to your last point here, because I think it's a really good point, some really good topic to talk about, and that's getting the right people to roll with. And honestly, I believe there's not too many wrong people, but I think sometimes the attitude that two people are approaching a role with can be drastically different, and that can cause problems. I think sometimes I've approached a role with the attitude that, I'm 52 years old and this guy's 28 and he's a competitive blue belt, and, I'm just hoping to get some work in here and not get hurt. And maybe we don't know each other very well, and he's approaching the role from, I'm a blue belt and this guy's a purple belt, and I'm going to, take this opportunity to see how many times I could, get it on a purple belt. That's not going to work out very well for either of us, really. And I think a lot of it's about developing relationships. When you're talking, Byron, about the way you're rolling with Gary and the way you guys are learning, you guys have been rolling together 15 years and developing this relationship. And I think that's important. So if you're an older guy and there's some young guys in the gym just killing you every time, it might not be anything wrong with them or the way they're approaching jiu-jitsu in general. There's nothing wrong with the way you're approaching it, but you guys need to get on the same page when you're rolling. And once you guys develop that relationship, get on the same page, it's all good.
Yeah, that's good. I think that the great thing about having a team is that if you have a few people who aren't great to roll with, they're not your main training partners. If you had to pick one person to train with for 3 months, Joe, you'd have to really make a big decision there. But because that's not the way we do jiu-jitsu, you show up and you do half a dozen rolls or whatever, you train with several people. It's more of a variety than that. But if you had to just pick one person to train with, you'd have to very carefully select, well, who's going to help me with my this part of my game that I want to work on, and then pick that person who is actually going to help me versus just try to destroy me, or who would be non-competitive. all these things go away when you have a good team, a good variety of people to train with you. And that's the way. That's an advantage of bigger gyms. If you're at a small club, you've got 3 people that you're training with all the time, you really need to try to bring in a bit of playfulness to where the guy who's 100 pounds bigger than everybody doesn't play top smash game every roll. He will sometimes play, work on his escapes or something like that, and not work super hard and not get upset when he gets caught. Sometimes it can be difficult to get these training ideas into people because it's not fun to get tapped, especially if it's rare that it happens to you. But it's part of learning and it's part of growing your team. And I think that's just one advantage that big teams have is you won't get stuck with one person every time you go in and train. So the good thing is most teams as jiu-jitsu grows, most teams do get bigger as the years tick by and better quality jiu-jitsu as the people stick with it and get better themselves. And the training methods, like we're talking about today, get better and better. And so in time, these problems kind of fix themselves as your club grows.
Absolutely.
But if you think this is a episode that would benefit a training partner of yours, share it with them, and hopefully, maybe they're not training, they're not rolling in a way that would be the best way for people to learn, including themselves. This might change their idea, or change their mind, because we all know that we learn techniques during the technique portion. We learn, some fine tuning skills during the, positional sparring stuff. But you need to be learning while you're rolling. Rolling is the funnest part of jiu-jitsu. That's why we're there. We're there to roll. It's so much fun. But if you can't learn during that portion of class, you're taking out a large chunk of learning time. A very important learning time. It's not like it's equal. I think I learn more while I'm rolling than, per minute than a lot of times when I'm trying to learn technique or watch a video about, how to perform something. I think sometimes my rolling time is much more valuable, my learning part.
Yeah, there's things that we didn't talk about that you can kind of only learn while rolling.
That's true.
Awareness and sensitivity and timing. Those things are really hard to learn just by watching technique demonstrated. They're a little easier to learn when you're repping the technique, and if you're positional sparring, the deeper you get into it, the more you learn those abstract things. And yeah, without some live rolling and some competitive high intensity rolling, your timing and your awareness just won't be there. So don't skip those rounds at the end of class.
Well, we always want to remind you guys we're happy to train with any of the listeners, and we've had opportunity to do that a few times recently. But if you're in Wichita, Kansas area and you want to get some mat time with Gary or myself, send us a message at byjjbrick@gmail.com, or you can message us through the Facebook fan page and we'll connect with you and find out when would be the best time to train. Joe, where could they find you and try to choke you at?
If they try to choke me, they're probably going to be successful. Most of the time, I'm at the south side of Houston. I am over in the New Orleans area part of the time for work as well. So anytime you're in the South here, if you're in the Houston or New Orleans area, let me know and I'll try and get some chokes and jokes in with you.
We have an article to talk about. It's at fightersmarket.com. It's a blog post. It's 5 taboo topics in BJJ. With Gary here, we're each going to pick one, so we knock out 3 of the 5 and discuss that. Joe, what topic on here is reaching out to you today?
Well, I'll start at the bottom only because I know somebody who recently has encountered this, and that's dating within the gym. And that's oftentimes been looked at as something that should not happen or something you should try and avoid. And man, there's a lot of pitfalls to that. And I'll say one thing, if you're white belts and part of the reason you're dating is you're both passionate about jiu-jitsu, odds are one of you is going to find another hobby at some point to move on to, so you got to keep that in mind. But recently I had the opportunity to be involved with a wedding for couple of my friends, and they met on the jiu-jitsu mat. They dated, but they followed some advice that the guy has in here. They kept their dating life separate from the mats. I don't know if they had any fights or arguments, but it doesn't bleed onto the mats. It doesn't bleed into social media that has anything to do with our gym. So it can be problematic, but it can also be great. And you just got to the same boundaries would apply like if you were dating at work or in any other group. So that's the one that first jumped out at me. How about you, Byron?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. You just need to remember that you already have a relationship, and that's a gym relationship, and there's not a lot of people involved as far as the whole team. And so if you think that you're going to, if you're not serious about it, you want to date somebody and just it's not serious to you, that could be a difficult thing for everybody to have. So just know that you go train tomorrow, they're going to still be there. That's not a thing that is just you meet somebody going out at the club or whatever, and whether it works or it doesn't, it's fine. If you end up upsetting somebody or breaking someone's heart at the gym, they still want to train jiu-jitsu, but they may not want to be around you anymore. So you've kind of made that a tough spot. So be careful with that.
Absolutely.
One on here I've talked about before is washing your belt. It's kind of it's mentioned as an old superstition thing with jiu-jitsu. The issue is we want to be clean in jiu-jitsu. We have very close bodily contact in our sport, and it's not a weird thing for some material of your belt to be by somebody's face or who touch their eye, whatever. And you want to be as clean as you can. We take measures. It's like I think if you're like a straight up germaphobe that you hate germs, it'd be real hard to train jiu-jitsu because you are getting somebody's sweat on you sometimes and that sort of thing. That happens. But why walk in with a belt which is 2 inches wide and 6 to 8 feet long? That's a lot of square inches of material. That's filthy when you walk in. So big advocate. Throw your belt in with your gi when you wash it. I hang dry mine. The problem with the dryer is the dryer, like Joe dries his gis and stuff like that. That's fine. It wears out a little bit quicker, and so I don't want to wear my belt out quicker than I need to. So I'll hang dry my belt. Joe was here in town. He's like, I just dry my gi. If I gotta buy a new gi every couple of years because it wears out, that's fine. Like, that's a good point.
especially if the time and effort involved might prevent you from washing your gi or washing your belt.
Yeah,
absolutely. The cost of a belt is nothing compared to getting staph infection or giving somebody else ringworm or something. So, yeah, if the reason you're not washing your stuff as much as you should is because it's too time consuming, you got to hang your gi up and stuff. I don't feel it wears it out fast enough to justify not doing it. So it's easy for me. I
remember back in my purple belt days, we would have, outbreaks of ringworm every few months. Oh, we got ringworm in the gym, make sure you're washing your gi well. I'm just going to spray the mats real great. I don't think we had an outbreak of ringworm at Fox Fitness, but back in the day, we used to have these things would happen, and I would get ringworm or a teammate would get ringworm. You take care of it. You set the mats for a week or two, and it's all good. But what wasn't happening is I wasn't washing my belt. Dang. I could have easily been just bringing it back onto the mat.
That's like washing all your plates and bowls and glasses and everything, but we don't wash our forks.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good way. That's a great example of that. It's definitely getting dirty. It's definitely it's on the outside of the gi. It's where the most amount of things can be absorbed. It's touching the mat. It's touching your opponents. It's touching you sometimes, and you got to clean that. So it's pretty much a no. It seems so obvious to me. The old superstition is when you wash your belt, you forget your jiu-jitsu. Is that not the silliest thing? Like, that's silly. That's not. You're forgetting your jiu-jitsu because you didn't learn it in a way that was conducive to your learning. It's not in your belt. You could hand me a white belt today. I could put it on and roll the exact same. If I had this, my belt doesn't matter. Let alone how clean it is. And if anything, it costs you mat time, because you will occasionally get ringworm or get staph, and it could cost you that week or so of mat time. So having a clean belt, having a clean facility actually is beneficial to your jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, and there's another unintended consequence here that might play well to you. It used to be before stripes were a big deal, and I think even though we give stripes out now, an old, worn, tattered belt is sort of a badge of honor, right? You see some guy with a purple belt that's practically falling apart. Like, man, that guy's he's a gym rat, man. He's on the mats every night. He's been doing this a long time. He's been a purple belt for a while. Nothing like washing and drying your belt to get it tattered quicker.
That's a good point, Joe.
So you'll look like you're that gym rat veteran, but really you're just clean and pay attention to hygiene.
You know what? Thinking about it from the other point of view, I used to think I got a belt at the same time as somebody else, and theirs is clearly getting worn out quicker than mine. I was thinking, he's washing that thing. He's not training that much harder than me, that much more. Like, it actually annoyed me. That's not the case.
That's not the case.
Everybody wash your belt, and everybody's belt will wear out the same basic rate, because if you train 5 times, you wash your belt 5 times, there you go. If you everybody does that, Yep. Who cares what your belt looks like as far as the condition? I've never really understood that either. Here's another tip. Because Gary's supposed to have one. I don't think we need to even cover the other 3 because we're kind of getting off topic here onto the tangent of belt washing. When you start washing your belt and you have more than one gi, inevitably you will pack in your other dry gi, and this happens to me sometimes, your drying belt will remain hang drying next to your other gi, and you'll show up to the gym and not have that belt. So you need to have 2 belts, which actually slows down the rate that your belt wears out, and have one in your gym bag ready to go. So even if I forget my gi, my belt, and I just grab it, I've got several gis. I've never really forgot a gi before, but if I forget to grab my belt, because it's a little smaller, easier to leave behind, I can't forget my belt because I have a spare one ready to go.
Yeah,
so
that's a good point.
I think that's fine. I don't think coaches should have a problem with somebody owning 2 belts of the same color.
Absolutely not. And we're getting further off topic here, but I've heard people ask questions before about, my stripe fell off my belt. What do I do? Your coach gave you the stripe. It wasn't the piece of tape he was giving you. It was the promotion to that level. Put another stripe on it and super glue it this time. It won't fall off again.
You super glue them?
I super glue mine.
I didn't know that.
Well, I don't have any stripes on my belt. Haven't for a long time. I've only been awarded stripes once my whole jiu-jitsu journey. But
so have I.
That's another topic. If you're doubting that a tattered belt, though, gives you a little bit of cred, I remember I had a competition at blue belt, and it was the first one I'd done in quite a few years. I'm standing on the edge of the mat. I'm kind of nervous. My wife comes down to encourage me, but she looks over at the other guy who's got a tattered blue belt on, and she says, from the looks of his belt, he's been a blue belt a long time. I was like, thanks, babe. He's going to kill me.
That's funny. But sometimes those guys get those brand new belts, and they are darn good coming out the gates.
Yes, that's true also. Yeah.
But, so check out the article. There's much more. There's 5 taboo topics in BJJ. The link will be in the show notes. We only covered 2 of the topics, and we largely didn't cover what was written in the article. We did a little bit about the dating thing and the washing the belt as well. Like, it's pretty silly to not be washing part of your gi. Do that, guys. It'll keep you guys healthier, keep your teammates healthier as well. Gotta give a quick shout out to a few of our Patreon members. We have Michael, Dennis, and Brian have been loyal Patreon supporters for quite a while now. So thank you guys for that. And what happens is they listen to the show. They said, man, I want to help these guys out. I want to support the podcast here. And we'll mail you out a 5-inch BjjBrick gi patch. We've got the throwback patch, the original, and we still have some of those. And we also have the new updated 2.0. I guess you call it 3.0 because there's 3 of us. 2.0 because it's the 2nd edition. I don't know. Probably 2.0
I don't think that's how it works.
You can name it anything you want, Joe. We can name it after a candy or a submission. This is the Kimura edition or the toe hold edition. Anyway, so it's never been more beneficial time to become a Patreon supporter because we send you out 2 gi patches and a sticker. You're welcome to join the private Facebook group where we do a little behind-the-scenes trash talking to Gary, and sometimes we discuss future episodes that are in the pipe. So there's a link in the show notes to Patreon. We appreciate all of our support. And from Michael, Dennis, and Brian, man, you guys have been supporting us for a while. We really appreciate that. And if you are already a Patreon supporter, and I've got the list here in front of me, and you want the new gi patch, send me an email with your new address saying, hey, or it could be the same address. Send me an email with your address, say, hey, currently a Patreon supporter, can you email it to this address? I'll get it in the mail. That's all you got to do is send an email. I want you guys that have been supporting us to have these patches. It is really great to have you guys behind us supporting us.
Absolutely appreciate it, guys. What's on tap next week, Byron?
Glad you asked. I'm excited. David Brown is our interview. He is a senior grappler. He started jiu-jitsu kind of on a whim, I guess. He watched his son do a little jiu-jitsu. He's like, man, I'm going to try this. He was overweight, out of shape, hadn't worked out, and he hit the mats, and he's like, this is great. He loved it. He loved competing. He started competing, getting serious about that. He's winning tournaments. He's in phenomenal shape. He went from being out of shape and overweight to being one of the top competitors in his division. And it's really a motivational story. And his name is David Brown. He lives in Texas if you want to try to track him down before the episode. But it's a great story. A really smart guy and shares a lot of what he has experienced with jiu-jitsu and the benefits it has brought to him. So excited to bring you guys David Brown next week.
Awesome. Looking forward to it, man.
We're hoping that Gary is with us the entire, the front third and the bottom back third of the show next week, too.
Yeah, it's good to have Gary on the show today.
Just a little while. Just a little Gary. That's all he delivers most time anyway.
Oh, man.
Until then, stay sweaty, my friends.
Don't forget to shower and train hard, train smart, and we'll see you on the mats, guys. And
special note to Gary, charge your battery on your computer, my friend. We can't be having this happen routinely.
Gary's contribution is so great, though, that, it only takes a short while for him to make the show better.
Yeah, that's what they, 2 minutes in heaven is better than 1 minute in heaven.
Something like that.
Thank you for listening. I hope you find the time today to roll. After all, the best way to get better at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.